Let us pray. Gracious God, as we come into the time that we celebrate the coming of your birth and living into your name, Emmanuel, God with us, this Christmas season, we want to pause. We want to appreciate what comes before Christmas and acknowledge that there is a season that the church has celebrated called Advent that includes a longing and a crying out and a pleading for your presence to be in the world. And so, God, we want to simply appreciate all of who you are and long for your coming once again into this earth. We love you. We praise you above all things, especially ourselves. And it is in your precious and holy nature, Father, Son, and Spirit, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, welcome everyone to the Spirituality and Mysticism podcast. We're excited to be here with y'all. I'm excited that you're here with us whenever you're listening to this. And we had a good week, and we're going to start getting into Advent, the season of Advent here. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit today. The church seasons, I love the church seasons. I don't know about you guys, but I'm really a big fan of the church seasons because it makes us focus on certain things at certain times, which is really why I like the lectionary. I've not been using the lectionary, but I enjoy using the lectionary because it makes me talk about things and think about things that I don't normally or wouldn't want to think about or talk about. And so I like that about the church seasons, is it makes us have a certain, certain rhythms, in life and in the life of the church, and we can focus on things, several times a year in different ways. And so I think I'm a big fan of those.
A certain je ne sais quoi.
Yeah.
Cool.
What about y'all? What's your take on church seasons? Are you for them? Against them?
I'm against it. No. No,
I can go right down the drain of poopiness for me.
That's right.
No.
No, I did pretty standard pastoral ministry for over 20 years, preaching every week, and for most of that time, I didn't use the lectionary either, although I have for the past number of years. To sort of get back into common ground with the church historically and more broadly. But even when I was doing real topical and like even real contemporary stuff, I would still use the liturgical cycle and the seasons. I think I just love the corporate discipline. That sounds austere, but the corporate discipline of just like walking through the Jesus story together in worship, and I mean, touching on other things, but I just think building our lives on an annual basis around, the foundational story of Christ, and kind of walking through that is just a great basic fabric for our lives.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. Like, I changed my favorite color, just me personally, to green because I love the everyday time, the common time of the liturgical calendar. I love the idea of combining colors with seasons and brings back memories, and I love it. I just think it's a very holistic way of being able to live out our faith, and it has such rich history, even going all the way back to the Israelites and Passover, and even then colors were starting to actually have meaning and seasons, and they had a time where they would always once a year remember what God did for them, leaving Egypt and find the promised land, so I love the fact that even at the very earliest of our faith, there's always been a rhythm to it, and an encouraged rhythm by God, especially for memory and remembrance. And so I'm a big fan of anything, liturgical calendar, the cycles, the readings that we have. The lectionary, for those of you who don't know, is just a set of scripture readings that covers the entire Bible over the course of 3 years, A, B, and C. And so that's the reason we're saying, as pastors, we say that we like to do that, because instead of us always choosing what the text is, sometimes it could just start to slowly turn into what I think it should be. And then if you're using the lectionary, then you're kind of forced to have to deal with some scriptures you might not feel comfortable with, or might not be an easy one to be able to preach from or through, but it keeps you honest. And so in a way, it forces you to be able to, to cover some of the parts of the Bible that you might not ever really want to cover. Or even feel comfortable covering, and so it kind of forces you to kind of grow a little bit in that way too. But anyway, that's just the small piece that I love about the lectionary. I absolutely love it. I love liturgical calendars, and Advent is one of those, is which we're going to be talking about today, hopefully.
Well, and another cool thing about that lectionary too is that other people that use it, like, then people from different churches have something to talk about. That's what really made me, like, I used it for that reason, to keep me honest and make me preach about things that, but then that's how I started using it. But when I was in Texas, some of the ladies were in a bowling league with some Catholic ladies, and they would talk about, the sermons would be about the same thing, and so they could talk about the sermon at the bowling alley, and they really liked that, because they had two different perspectives then, and they had some like really good conversations, because they had a similar experience. And so it kind of like matches us up with other people too. And so there's a lot of really good benefits to that. And I think church seasons is the same thing. Like when we're all celebrating and doing those things together, there's something about that community experience that's really cool. And so today we're going to talk about Advent. We're starting, this is the first Sunday in Advent that we're recording this. And so what are you guys' thoughts about that? What does Advent mean to y'all?
So let me go first and just say confessionally that I liked Advent when I was a kid and growing up in church, because it was like, get ready for Christmas. And the pastor I had growing up didn't care if we sang Christmas carols during Advent, and I dug that. And then I got to seminary, and
you didn't even know that, right? You didn't even know that was a thing, right? Like,
yeah, and then I thought it was Advent, and then I got to seminary, and I loved seminary. I loved seminary, and I love worship, but I did not like my worship professor, who's a very, very noteworthy worship theologian in the United Methodist Church, one of the greats, who told me what academically Advent was all about, and I didn't like it anymore, because he tried to make me have my people sing all these actual Advent hymns that nobody knows, and most of them are really terrible to sing. And actually, I didn't know any better. I was young at the time, so I tried to get my church to sing Advent hymns, and they hated me for the holidays. It was really traumatic. They didn't give me any Christmas money that year. They were so mad. And
you're just like, we're gonna sing "O Come, Emmanuel."
Hey, that song's
Sunday.
okay. I'm talking about the other ones that are bad. Like, that's a good one.
Well, but that's one of the few good ones that's Advent.
Oh, and "Come Thou Long Expected Jesus." We sang that this morning. I like that one. It's Charles Wesley. It's good.
But those are the only two that people like really recognize, and they're like, "This is Advent." Like,
I don't know any of the other ones.
Well,
I still don't.
John, just explain Advent and Christmas and what the difference between the two are, just because it's important for everyone to be able to know that. I don't think very many people know, to be honest with you.
Oh, no, for sure. So Advent is a season that encompasses the 4 Sundays prior to Christmas, starts the 4 Sundays out from Christmas, and season preparation. The other thing is that good enough? Anything else? Did you want more than that?
I don't know. No, it's just like, so we're longing for Jesus. Christmas doesn't start liturgically, Christmas doesn't start
until the 24th.
On December 1st, or the fourth Sunday before Christmas Eve, or Christmas Day. And Christmas Day is when we're supposed to start Christmas.
Yeah.
And, we say it generally, hey, Christmas starts, right after Thanksgiving or something like that. But honestly, Advent starts, not right after Thanksgiving, but just really close after Thanksgiving. And it's Advent that you're in all the way up until Christmas Day. And then Christmas starts, and then you're supposed to keep on celebrating Christmas. Like, you're not supposed to take down the Christmas tree day after Christmas. Like, that's when it actually starts and goes on. So anyway, I just want to always like to tell everybody that that's, liturgically, that's what is the correct way of thinking about that season. Anyway, all right, sorry, John.
And then lasts for 12 days, right? The Christmas season, so that 12 days of Christmas is actually like a more theologically or maybe not theologically, but a more churchy, like Orthodox Christian song than what it seems to be, right? Like that's, we don't say
Orthodox.
Church, but.
Yes.
And in a weird way, we're doing what we should be doing in Advent because we all want Christmas. Like, everybody wants Christmas. Like, we love Christmas. This is when I get presents, and even other faiths are jealous because we get all these gifts and things like that. And it's like, oh my gosh, I want Christmas. I want Christmas. That is Advent. That's a good part of Advent. But I think that sometimes we want to jump the gun and go straight into Christmas, and instead of not having that longing, that wanting period in peace. So I don't know. I think we do it, but we don't know why we're doing it, and we don't even know what we're doing sometimes. And so sometimes it's actually good to be able to remind people, like, ooh, you know how much you really want Christmas to happen? That's Advent. And let's get into it. Let's ask about it. Let's think about that. Why do you want Christmas so bad? All those different kinds of things. Yeah.
And we do a pretty good job, because we are, as we're decorating and as we're buying gifts and we're doing all that stuff now, we are preparing for Christmas. So we kind of have it right. We just don't own it very well. And exactly. I think that this whole idea could catch on. I mean, everybody wants to have a birthday week now, or a birthday month.
Birth week.
Birth month. Not in my house, dude. No way. I got so many kids. We're not doing that. They're lucky they get a day. Just kidding, kids, if you're watching this.
But that's like, I mean, if we had 12 days of Christmas, like, you would think that would catch on,
well, and like in some places
on sale, like if you on the 26th, you can get everything super cheap. So maybe that's a better way to do it, right?
It's when you make all your returns for stuff you didn't really want. Yeah. Happy birthday, Jesus. Here's all the stuff I didn't want. But and Todd, so I mean, you lived in El Paso, and I spent a number of years in El Paso, and in El Paso, I mean, Mexican culture and El Paso on the border there, I mean, they really preserve a lot of those old traditions of the 12 days of Christmas, because I mean, in El Paso, you still really celebrate commonly Dia de los Reyes, or Epiphany, which is on January 6th, and that's the culmination of the 12 days of Christmas. And a lot of the families of Mexican origin in El Paso give more gifts on King's Day than they do on Christmas even. And you get like the king cakes. And so, like, I mean, for years, with my kids, when we lived in El Paso, we really celebrated that whole tradition. It was part of the culture around us. It was a great way to let some of my kids know about their own cultural background, and then really participate in the community around. And that was, I mean, just a great way to shape sort of that meaning, that extension of Christmas, and tie it in again, like, to the rest of the story of Jesus and where it goes from there. There are, I mean, all these pieces to the story that really unfold in some beautiful ways. And there are some, pockets that really preserve that. And so how do we learn from each other, right? That's what we're always trying to do.
No, that's cool. Yeah. It's crazy awesome.
The other thing, confessionally, that I really hated about Advent is, for a lot of people, they don't know what else to do with Advent, and so it really becomes a focus on the second Advent, or the second coming of Jesus. And I think by and large, the church really misunderstands the meaning of that and misuses it. Like, I love to teach on Revelation, and man, that book, I swear half the people talking about it have never actually read it. They've just taken somebody else's notes, and I mean, it's crazy what's in there and what's not.
Yeah.
So just to be honest, like, my other hang up with Advent for a long time was just, I think we totally misunderstand and misrepresent the significance and meaning of Jesus first or second. I don't even like the word second in that context. Advent. I think for me, Advent. So for a long time, part of the reason I made Christmas, start early is I just didn't feel real comfortable dealing with future Advent themes and incorporating that into Advent and Christmas and sort of mashing that all together. And the more Revelation gets misused in our culture by pockets in the church, the more I really wanted to avoid that. And increasingly, I've gotten more comfortable with the idea for me of what Advent means in sort of two threads. One, I really like more of the idea of the image of the future of Jesus reigning and what goes with that, which is, right treatment of others, ethics, sorrow and pain gone, and all those really beautiful depictions out of Revelation, the new kingdom, and really, how in Advent do we not just prepare for Christmas, but really commit ourselves to living as much as we can in the future kingdom now. So it really isn't looking for a someday, but it's saying all that's true about what God ultimately intends. Because I follow Christ and I receive his gift, how do I lean into that stuff and live that out more fully now, so that others might believe that the things we face are not God's ultimate intention for us. And for me, that's been that has become a more important part of Advent, and a theme that's in sort of classic Advent that I had to sort of come to grips with in my own life and figure out, what does that mean for me?
Yeah. I mean, you guys have summed up everything I would say that it believes that, that what it means to me too. So I completely agree. It's just a yearly reminder of a longing and a need for Christ, for Christ's presence to be in the world, and through me, through the church, through us, not the second coming, but that need, and this is what I was saying before the podcast, that like I can't think of a more desperate cry from my own heart and my own soul for the peace of Christ to come in a very humbling way as a child, but that peace of Emmanuel, God with us, is so desperately needed in this year, particularly. Like in the past 20 years, I can't think of a more time where I am desperately crying out for peace and renewal among a people and among a world, to be honest with you. And so it's Advent this year for some reason. Well, we all know the reason, but Advent this year has so much more meaning for me, because just like the people in Jesus' day that are just crying out, they're being oppressed, they're being suppressed, they're being they're not allowed to be the people that they know that they are called to be and that they are told to be, and desperately longing for God to do something, to make something right, to fix all the crap that humanity has done. And so anyway, it's such a beautiful, meaningful time this year for me intentionally.
I think too, that idea of waiting is such a waiting, preparing. I mean, those are the ideas that come into my mind about Advent, right? Waiting and preparing, both. But when I think about it, like God shows up all the time, just shows up, right, in the world all the time, in my life all the time. God just shows up, and it's not like one day, December 25th every year that God shows up in that way, right? It happens all the time.
Yeah.
That's when we celebrate it, and that's when we develop the habits, the spiritual. See, I'm starting to think more and more that the point of church is really to practice these habits, these spiritual habits, these spiritual practices that we talk about on this podcast. The whole point of church is to practice those things together, so then you're good at it or better at it, the next year and the next year and the next year, and we get better at preparing, get better at waiting, for God to show up. Because I want to get things done. I want God. All right, God, here's what, like, I draw up really good plays, for God, and God doesn't always run the right routes.
Yeah.
And it makes me really upset. And so, but I think though that for me to wait, right, and the whole idea of Sabbath, like taking time and taking space, the whole idea of meditation that we've been talking about, taking time to slow down is the thing that I need to do. So a season like Advent, where I practice slowing down and I practice waiting and preparing for God to do something and planting seeds and not expecting results right away all the time, but planting a garden, and then watching the stuff come up, and to practice that every year and to get in that habit every year and get better at doing that helps me all the rest of the year. If I take this seriously, if I take Advent seriously, then I can better prepare for that all the time, and I can slow down. I can live my life at a pace that works long term, and using different seasons to do different things. And so for me, I love Advent for that reason, because I can think about, okay, how do we prepare for God to show up and do something crazy? And we have that part. That's our part, right? Is the preparation part. God's going to do something that has nothing to do with us, but is for us, right? But we do all the work, to prepare for that to happen. And I think that's exciting. I love that, because it gives me something to do,
And I want to follow up on that. Like, I really love your emphasis on community there. Like, I don't think that church is good about being community in a lot of cases, especially when it comes to community, recognizing the presence of God as a community, or, asking for forgiveness as a community. Everyone, at least in the Western mindset, is very individualistic, me. And so there's always opportunities, especially in the world we live in today, to remind everyone that this is a communal thing. We are all participating in Advent as the church, Big C Church, not just the Methodist or your local place. I mean, everyone is participating as the body of Christ in this season. And what does that look like? How can we long? How can we cry out in ways that are healthy and beautiful and powerful and meaningful? How does a church have a really good cry? You know what I'm saying? Like, there are times in my life where I can just tell people, yeah, I needed a good cry. Like, I had to go have a good cry. And it was just like, slobby, snot everywhere, good cry kind of a thing. I don't think the church has done that. Not since I've been alive. I've never heard a communal church really truly ask for forgiveness for communal understandings, So what does that look like? I mean, that's the side note, but what does it look like to longingly cry out to God? We desire, over and over and over again in our body, in this body of Christ. How do we long for that? How do we do that in our families? How do we do that in our communities? How do we do that in our neighborhoods? To truly cry out, saying, I'm sick and tired of the division. And I am. I'm getting sick of it. I'm getting really, really sick of it. And I'm almost to the point of having a good snot flying everywhere cry. I had one of those whenever I realized the Methodist Church.
When religion seems
to.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying that I think it feels like religion's kind of in the center of all that too. Like a lot of the disagreement.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It is definitely in the center of all that, and that's just, yeah. No, I'm getting on a soapbox. I need to stop, but yeah, I feel like Advent is it's one of those misunderstood things that could be just unbelievably powerful. If we allowed God, if we allowed God to do it, if we were sensitive enough to the Spirit's leading, if we had done all these practices enough time to where we could be able to hear God, not audibly or audibly, whatever, but to be able to understand what God's desires are for the world and for the church. Definitely.
So, what are some things that you guys do to practice that? I've done a few things. When you're in the church, regular churches, you have to like come up with stuff every year, and so I've tried to come up with different things, and our 1 year we like different things you focus on each week, because that's how kind of I break it down, is like, okay, if I do this every day this week, and then this every day the next week, and this every day the next week, right, to prepare. And so one year we talked about Festivus, and we did all of the different Festivus things one week, right? Hearing of grievances and feats of
Festivus for the rest of us,
right? Yeah. And in each of those, and we had a Festivus pull up. I tried to do it instead of a tree, but they put a tree up also. I tried. But
amazing.
It's really, so there was things you could do, right? Like, well, what do we do to get stronger? Like, let's do something to be stronger spiritually this week. Let's do things. This year, we started by talking about what to let go of, because when Hezekiah rebuilt or cleansed the temple, was what we were reading from, because I'm going through the Bible, and I'm in Chronicles, which is great Advent stuff. But the first thing they did is they took all the filth out, and it's in the NRSV it says filth, and I like that. They got rid of the filth before then they started to do other things to cleanse the temple. But the first thing is like get the bad stuff out. So every day I'm going to try to do something to get rid of a bad habit, get rid of just some stuff. When you pull out all your Christmas decorations, it's a great time to like get rid of some stuff. You're pulling stuff out, you're moving stuff around. It's a great time to just like get rid of some stuff, so you have more room, especially because on Christmas, if you're getting more stuff, like you need room for all that stuff. And so I don't have a thing I'd really do every year, but that's what I'm kind of doing this year, is just letting the books of the Bible, like in order, kind of reveal something about what to do to prepare and focus on that preparation, and what we can do each week.
And Todd, as you were talking about getting rid of the filth, I mean, that's the classic mystic Christian articulation of spiritual development is like a threefold path. So purgation, a lot of times that gets changed to purification, but the old word is purgation, which is the purge. It's not just like
purge. It's purging.
Yeah, I mean, right. It's not purification is a watered down word. It's like, I'm gonna dab some water, do some kind of ritual for purification. And not to make light of those practices, but purgation is much more visceral in saying, I'm going to get rid of some filth. And then what would be interesting to see, you already have that starting piece. So then the other two parts of the path are from purgation to illumination, and then union. So it'd be interesting to see, like, how would you, just on your own, sort of carve out your own form of that threefold mystic path. If purgation to get rid of that filth, what would illumination which, look like, which is more of the learning, shedding light on things, right? So even the metaphor of, got to clean out the temple and get rid of all the filth. Then we got to light the candle so we can see what's going on in there. Make sure we got all the filth. And then it's, okay, now we're going to worship or, do our union thing with God and other people. Which and it just reminded me of that, since this is the Spirituality and Mysticism podcast. Like, you've got a really good start on that classic path.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's cool. I like that. And you do, right? I remember hearing Rob Bell talk about, like, you have to let go of things. Like, if your hands are full of stuff, right? Like your baggage or your spiritual baggage or whatever, your guilt, your shame, your whatever, like, you're holding on to that stuff. You can't grab anything more once your hands are full. You have to let go of some stuff. Like, you have to let go. And I feel like in our culture, we're not very good at that, and in some ways, maybe we are really good at it, because, we buy things and, they break in 3 years and we buy another one. And, it's not like, it used to be where things would last, and you could fix it and you would have the same thing for a long time. So maybe we're better at it in some ways.
Except I would argue the proliferation of storage companies and storage units tells us we're not.
That's a good industry to get into, actually. That's probably pretty smart. Maybe I look into that.
Yeah, storage.
But look at all the really popular, like Marie, Marie Kondo? Anyway, the one that's like, if it doesn't bring you joy, then throw it out. You know what I'm talking about? Like the on Netflix or whatever.
Right.
There's a lot of those now. There's a ton of those things. Like, my wife is really into the decluttering stuff.
Yeah.
And she listens to podcasts. There's all kinds of TV shows now. I mean, that is a thing that is going on in society, and they're realizing, holy crap, we have all this stuff that is not used. And so it's like they're making an entire business around purging and doing it in a very, very personal way. I have a friend of mine that I was a part of a think tank kind of a group with, and her idea that she was trying to bring about and trying to create a nonprofit ministry around was she basically is a chaplain at a nursing home. And so she said one of the greatest challenges that everyone has when it comes to the death of loved ones is what to do with all their stuff. Like, they have entire garages filled with stuff, and they didn't accumulate it. It was their parents that accumulated it, but there's just so much stuff, and they get overwhelmed with it all. They're just like, I don't know what to do with it. And so she was just saying that, she would love to be able to have create a ministry that's basically helping them not only to deal with the beauty of the death and what can be found as far as beauty in death, but also how to be able to purge in a very healthy spiritual way, especially if it's not even your own stuff, it's somebody else's stuff, and to be able to see how bogged down and how, it just fills us with, like, I don't know what, and my grandmother passed away, but she had remarried. And so her remarried husband, he just now finally passed away. And now we're having to deal with all my grandmother's stuff. Like, and it's been in her house, and we didn't have to deal with it. And it was out of sight, out of mind. And now it's like my aunt and my parents are just, it's been going on for months trying to figure out, what do we do with this? And how do we do with this stuff? And just all of that. There's just so much going on when it comes to that. And so I think that's a really cool idea to talk about purging when it comes to Advent. That is a really cool thought and principle that I'm going to play with.
Lynn Sweet says that if something doesn't have a story, that you should get rid of it. You should only keep things that have a story. And that dude has a lot of stories, though, and so he has a lot of stuff. But what he did, though, was he got all these cabins, and he rents out all these cabins, and he puts his stuff in all these cabins. So he found room, he found a way to do it where all of it is like stuff isn't in storage. It's like there for people to see and ask about. And you can ask him about anything. He'll tell you the story about anything, like couches. There's a birthing chair in his living room, like an old birthing chair, which is my favorite place to sit in his living room. And it's like super comfortable, but it's like there's stories about everything, you know, and so I think that's really it's cool a cool way to look at that, you know, if like how to hold on to stuff, what to let go of, you know, if something has a story or something has a, you know, if you can't tell a story about it, you know, maybe it's not that important, you know.
Yeah, and maybe you need to set like a length on how long the story has to be. So like,
right.
You can just say, "Oh, I used that when I was a kid." Yeah, it's not a story. You just said a sentence.
There's one time this thing happened, right? And I mean, but even then, like, but what it does is it gives, so you have all these things, right? And so then you have all these stories. So every object in your house has a story, and you tell those stories because you look at it and it makes you think to tell the story about. So you tell these stories over and over and over again. Your kids tell the stories because they know that, because they've heard the story so many times. And then everybody knows your stories a lot better. It's something I started to do on birthdays, is ask people about their favorite birthday experiences or to share stories on birthdays, because you're talking anyway, and it gives everyone kind of something to talk about. And you're learning then about that person. Everyone's learning about that person, and that person gets the chance to tell their stories, which I think we don't do enough of that. Maybe social media helps us do that more, you know. And when you look back at memories, you look back at certain things. I try to see the good and the bad with all this stuff, right? Like, obviously social media has divided us in some ways, and you know, there's a couple really good movies out about how bad and dangerous it is, brainwashing and stuff, but I think there's some good stuff. There's a reason that we cling to some of this stuff, and it's good to understand some of that too.
Yeah.
No, that's good. That's cool. I like that. I like that a lot. You know, we always do an Advent calendar in my family. So for some of those, so now that you actually know what Advent is, now it makes sense. Oh, we're opening up a door, or we're doing something every single day in preparation for Christmas Day. So my wife, either I think she bought it or maybe she was given to her, I don't know, but it's a bunch of like handmade Christmas ornaments that are like felt Christmas ornaments. And so they're in pockets. And so what we do is my daughter grabs the first one December 1st, and we hang it on the tree. And then we just do something really dumb and fun. We sing "Oh Christmas Tree" with our arms around each other, and we're swinging our hips really wildly, not just like, but it's like, you know, we sing "Oh Christmas Tree" to the top of our lungs in the weirdest way we possibly can. So it's not just like this holy moment. It's just something stupid and fun that we do as a family every night. And so that's one thing we've always done. When it was just, it had no purpose. We didn't really have any meaning for it. And it probably still needs a little bit more meaning. Now that I think about it. But anyway, so that's the first thing that we always do. We've tried doing an Advent wreath and lighting a candle thing every night, but we could never get it going. Not the candle, but we just could never get the rhythm going there for that. But this year, I've already wrapped about 4 gifts, and they're already under the tree. And I intentionally did that as kind of a social experiment to my daughter, because as soon as I put it down there, the first question was, "Daddy, can I open up one of those gifts?" And my answer is no, we can't. It's not Christmas yet. It's Advent. And so every day she's been asking me, "Can we open up one of those presents yet?" And so this year has been kind of a little bit of a social experiment. So that first day was an opportunity for me to be able to say, Advent's starting, Sunday. And so, the Advent's all about waiting and wanting to open it, but we can't open it yet because it's just not time yet. And so every time that you see one of those gifts down there and you really want to open it, what can you be able to, how can you be able to talk to Jesus or say a small prayer, thanking Jesus for the gift, even though you can't open it yet. And then how much fun it's going to be whenever you do open it, kind of a thing. So that's one of the things I kind of did this year. I'm always trying to think of things for families, just because I have one, and that part's fun for me to do that. And then of course, I usually just personally, I always just try to find a small, like a devotional that's an Advent devotional that I could be able to read through, and just give me something every day to be able to read and to speak through, things like that. And so on the Order of the Trinity, the nonprofit ministry thing that I'm trying to start up and do, every evening prayer, I'll read whatever that daily summary is in one of N.T. Wright's really small devotional Advent devotionals. I think I'm doing the Luke one this year. He's got Luke one and Matthew one, and then just a general one of the apostles, and then I think he's got even more a general one too. But that's what I'm doing. That's the practices that I am practicing for Advent.
Cool. Yeah, my wife and I always do some kind of Advent reading too, a book or something online. This year, somebody, so I facilitate a centering prayer group every week on Tuesdays, and one of the folks that's been doing that group, now we're doing it just on Zoom because of all the pandemic, but we've been doing it for a couple years now. And it used to be.
I was going to also ask you, is that can we join that? Can we be a part of that, or can?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want a link?
Open, or like just?
It is open.
Even just
it's on,
watch you do it.
It's on Zoom, and so we can add you to the invite so you get a link. But basically, what we're doing is we're doing over the noon hour on Tuesdays, and probably in the spring I'll add a couple other installments to it.
Okay.
And basically, we just give 15 minutes for people to get there because it's New Mexico, and it takes a while, and just to check in and have a little chit chat, a little fellowship. Sure. Then I facilitate the centering prayer, and we do it for 20 minutes with a little bit of an on-ramp and off-ramp. And we just do that together. People can turn off their camera or leave it on or whatever they want to do, but it's silent, even though it's on Zoom. And then pretty much that gives us 15 minutes at the close of the noon hour. And so I just open it up for observations, comments, sharing. I always tell them, some people are verbal processors, and so they like to talk right after they've had an experience like that, and other people want to sit with it. So if you want to sit with it, that's fine, but we're going to give room for the verbal processors. And usually there's a handful of people that'll say something. If it's something that sort of asks for commentary from me as the facilitator, I'll chime in and say something. Quite often it's something encouraging, like, know that it wasn't a bad session. What you just described, you're fine. Like it's okay.
Right. Yeah.
Keep at it.
Yeah, encouragement. Okay. Well, I guess I want to experience that sometime. I'd love to do that with y'all.
Okay. Yeah.
So anyway, I'm sorry. Keep going. What do you do? What your wife do for Advent?
That's a good commercial for my Tuesday centering prayer. Let us know in the comment section if you'd like to be involved. Only $19.95. No, there's no cost. But somebody, we've mentioned Thomas Merton in this podcast. Merton comes up a lot in different places. And so somebody that's been part of that centering prayer group since we started it in person a couple years ago now, gave me Advent and Christmas with Thomas Merton. And so it's just a thin little book. See, it's only that big, very small, but it's readings throughout the Advent season. I always pick something. And so because I was given it and I love Merton, I'm reading through Merton this year. And they're really short, a page a day. It does not take a long time. It's a scripture, a little excerpt from one of Merton's books, and then a little closing prayer. So real easy. Some of the other things I've done in past years that have been really interesting. Often I will flip back and forth one year to another with something that's a little more contemplative in spirituality and inward focused on cultivation. And then I'll try to pick something that's real kind of socially oriented. And so I don't know if you guys or the viewers have ever stumbled across Plow Publishing, Plow like the farm implement. It's part of, it's the work of one of the Bruderhof communities in our country, which are old monastic, shared life communities that come out of Europe, and we have several communities in the United States. And they actually have a publishing house called Plow Publishing, and they have an Advent and a Lenten reader. And man, I mean, it's like a cross section of all these different authors, some people that aren't around anymore. But dude, that place is always like socially oriented, very justice oriented. And so like Plow Publishing's Advent reader, man, I mean, it'll make you squirm a little bit. It's great though, really good stuff. And then there's an online email-based one that's called Radvent, and that one too is like, man, that'll mess with you a little bit. So, and I just like the rhythm of not doing too much because Advent's already busy, but sort of 1 year to listen to something that sort of invites me into that contemplative space, and then the next year for Advent, I try to read something that really kind of pushes me on the outward expression. And so then I've got this sort of back and forth. And to be honest, I'll probably pick up and read the Plow devotions alongside of Merton this year, just because the Merton ones are really short. So I don't necessarily say I'm going to read one of each year, but I think somehow, like if people are reading kind of devotions or something like that for Advent, I mean, there really are some great things that run in those two different areas. And I think letting those kind of interplay in our lives is a great part of the Lenten journey, the inward and the outward focus, whether you read 2 books or just oscillate back and forth. And then another thing that I'm doing this year, I'm doing an online class actually that's kind of contemplative. It's called Lux Divina. We've talked about Lectio Divina and Visio Divina, and we'll do some other divinas with DG as we go forward. But this one is Lux, to look at the light that comes in Advent, because light is a big Advent theme. And it's a joint effort by Contemplative Outreach, which is the late Thomas Keating's Love Letter to the World, and another online group that does a lot of spiritual formation called Spirituality in Practice. And it's a combination of just some weekly materials. There are 3 live prayer groups that meet during the week that do different spiritual practices and some centering prayer. And then just sort of a 24/7 online community bulletin board kind of piece where people can just sort of talk about their practice, what's going on. And it starts with sort of declaring your intentions for Advent and for this Lux Divina journey. And so it's got a real, that's just started. I'm really excited about that one because it's a great combination of the real community orientation, but with those classic spiritual disciplines that often are fairly individualistic, depending on how you do them. And so I'm looking forward to doing that for my spiritual practice this year. And then that's plenty. And I'm just gonna like do my job, take care of my kids all day.
That's
awesome. Oh, wait, sorry, one other thing. DG, we actually, as a family, we do the lighting thing in the evenings during Advent. We've got a German wood spiral and a little wooden Mary and Joseph that follows the little spiral track. So it's almost sort of labyrinth-like. And it's got enough candles to get you through Advent each day. And we just do it like 8 o'clock's bedtime in my house for the younger kids. And so like 10 minutes to 8, we just sit down, we do like some kind of little devotion, listen to music, light the candle, move Mary and Joseph along the journey. And so that's been kind of a cool, started doing that a couple years ago. Yeah.
I actually know of another pastor that was a good friend of ours in Kentucky, and he actually made it, this is way before there was the elf on the shelf thing. But what he does is he kind of, I don't know. So Jesus doesn't show up into the manger until Christmas Day. And the wise men start off in Advent traveling there, but they don't get to the manger until Epiphany.
Yeah.
And so what it is the kids run around trying to find all 3 wise men, all 3 astrologers or whatever. Anyway, but there was something that's like wise women. Now we've corrected it. So I remember reading that somewhere. That was pretty cute.
Yes, but wise personages.
Anyway, exactly, yeah, personages. But anyway, they hide them. They hide all 3 of them in different parts of the house. And if they find all three of them, then I think they can give them a piece of candy or, you know, whatever else, you know, something like that. But they move them every single night, and then they have to find them again. But they can just get slowly closer and closer to the crush, you know, to the manger scene. So it's kind of cool. I like that.
That is cool.
It's a fun thing for kids to be able to kind of to do and to practice and to find those things. So it's kind of like, I don't know if I don't know if y'all know this or not, but every Trader Joe's has a hidden something. I forgot what it was, but there's like a hidden thing, and they hide it every day. And if the kids find it, then they give the kid like, you know, peppermint candy or something. I can't remember what it was, but yeah, you'll have to go in there and ask the Trader Joe people if they're doing it in that one Trader Joe's or not. But anyway, something like that. It's in the similar. And of course, my wife, she actually does the Elf on the Shelf stuff for Grace. Well, I mean, the Elf on the Shelf comes.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's that's a fun thing too, to be able to find the elf and what the elf do and all kinds of fun stuff too. But that doesn't really have anything to do with Advent or Christmas. It's just something that's like a family ritual that we do. But
that's cool.
But I'm kind of interested in this, you know, because I remember hearing, I know I keep on harping on the term lament, but lamentations and stuff. But I remember hearing or reading something somewhere that was just talking about like how we're not really good at lamenting as a church or as a community or as the church. And you know, when do we even give opportunities to lament? And what does that look like and things like that. So I was sitting there thinking like, what would a lamenting session at Advent look like, and what could that feel like and be like as a church or as a church service or something like that. But anyway, those are all just kind of things I've been thinking through in my own brain. Yeah.
It's interesting that you had those books, John, because that's what I was gonna bring that up. Lynn Sweet gave a little talk last week, I think, and he was like, "Hey, what are you guys' books that you read for Advent?" And I'm like, "Books? Like none. I guess you're supposed to do that, or some people do that."
Well, yeah, Lynn Sweet, here we go.
Yeah. And he pulled out like 20 books that he talked about. He's like, "These are my Advent books." And I'm like, "Oh my God." Like, I don't think I could get through one of those books.
Right.
Every Advent he reads the same books, which is super interesting. You know, he reads the same books every Advent so that, and it gets him into that kind of spirit. And so while we're giving plugs, another associate of his wrote a Christmas book called Saint Is, which is the name of the donkey is like Issachar or something, and so it's the Christmas story from the perspective of the donkey that Mary and Joseph are riding on, and he wrote this to be like something that people read, you know, can read every Advent. You know, it's short and it's you know. So he wrote it with that intention because people do that, like with books, I guess. And, you know, John's right on top of it. I don't, you know, I need to start that like tradition, but I'll start with like I'll probably start with his book.
Right.
So those devotions are good, really good ideas.
Yeah.
Really good ideas.
Well, I mean, the Advent conspiracy, wasn't that a thing? I think it's still going, but it was a big thing about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yep.
Maybe even 7 or 8 years ago. But I remember Advent conspiracy was a big thing. I found there was a book. I don't know if it's from the Advent conspiracy people or not, but I need to find it again. I can send it to you guys later on. You can put it in the notes if you want to, John, or something. But it's basically Advent from Mary's point of view, from a very feminine point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was a really cool. I like that idea and that thought. You know, it's very intentionally from a feminine point of view. And I don't know. That really resided with me, resounded, trying to say it, resounded with me in my heart, echoed my soul. I like that idea of being able to do that. But now I want you to take a picture of the spiral thing, John, and put that in the notes or send it to me, because I want to see the spiral. I would love to see that.
Yeah, we'll do.
I want to see that big time.
Yeah,
And
it's pretty cool.
and there's all kinds of other stuff too. I kind of, might do some like research, because Advent is celebrated, like, it's all over the world, and it's been going for so many years and times. And so I've always been interested in how different cultures have done this over the years. So I know the Germans do something, I can't remember exactly what it is. I know, like, I just want to go grab Eastern Orthodox and just say, hey guys, what do y'all do for Advent? And, and all these different things, to be able to find out kind of what other people do, and what their practices are, and is it communal, is it individual, is it whatever else it is, familial. Do you guys ever, do y'all bake hot cross buns? Do y'all ever make hot cross buns?
We've done that. We've done that a few times. We've normally done that in Lent.
Right.
Following the Lenten tradition for that.
Yeah, and it normally is a Lenten tradition. Yeah, but I was trying to think of, like, what's the Advent equivalent of
I know. Fruitcake.
Fruitcake. Okay. Well, King's cake. I was also thinking about the King's cake thing too.
Sorry, that's the other team's cake. Although I love fruitcake, I gotta tell you, Melanie bought me some. I'm the only one in the house that likes it. I have my own little fruitcake log.
Well, John, I'll tell you right now. I'm glad to know that. The only fruitcake I have ever eaten that I actually enjoy, and I mean the only one, is from the Abbey of Gethsemane, because they inject it with bourbon, and it is outstandingly delicious. It's so good. So I might, and it's expensive to get it shipped to you because it's so freaking heavy. But they sell it by like a half cake, and they also sell a whole cake thing. But I need to get you one, because, like, when I went and visited the Abbey of Gethsemane, they actually gave me one. Because I don't know, I think I told you this stuff. Did I tell you the story about how I went to visit the Abbey of Gethsemane, and I basically told them that I want to do work and also silence?
Yeah.
And so I packed all the fudge with a bunch of monks. That's my joke. But their thank you gift for me working with them the whole time was they gave me a whole fruitcake, and I was like, oh, thanks so much. I was like, I hate fruitcake. Why am I getting this? And man, I ate that, and I was like, I like fruitcake. No, I like it. I guess when you inject it with bourbon, I like it better for some reason.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll have to see if I can scrounge up some money and send you one. So I need your address.
Did it like cook out of it, or did you feel like intoxicated eating the cake?
No. It's I'm pretty sure it's cooked out, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. If it is cooked out of it, I'll send one to you, Todd. But I do know that they say they inject it. So I don't know if they inject it and it just kind of seeps in and soaks up, or if it's or if it actually is injected and then cooked. I don't know, just for the flavor piece, but it tastes great. It's the only fruitcake I've ever had.
Yeah, for the we could call it the Colorado fruitcake experience, and it's sell them as fundraisers.
The Colorado experience, huh?
Colorado fruit.
Yeah, the Colorado.
Has a good ring to it too. That's a great, and it's a whole experience.
Exactly. Each slice
we're going to start
is very edible.
Very edible. Maybe Bruce Springsteen would like jump on board with this. We need some sponsorships, so that'd be great. If anybody out there,
Let's talk to the boss.
Hook us up.
There you go. Exactly. I'll let you guys talk to the bishop and see if it's...
No. Stop it. Okay. So hey, we're getting close.
Oh my gosh.
We're getting close to the end of our time. We probably should have last words there, Todd.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Do you guys have any final thoughts? I think that I don't think I have any final thoughts, unless you guys say something that makes me think of one. You guys have any final thoughts?
I get all my thoughts out during the podcast. I don't have any final thoughts.
I
Ask
do.
me about 2 hours from now, and that's what I usually have.
Save them for next time. They can be next time's opening thoughts.
Write them down. Text them to everybody.
Yeah. I just wanted to lift up kind of two closing thoughts. One is that I would really encourage people to to do something for Advent, but don't go crazy, because like there's already enough anxiety in the world, and even at Advent time. I mean, one thing I had to learn, right, as a pastor, this is a really busy time of year. I want to go deeper with God. I want to do some things. I want to take on some things that are spiritually nurturing. I do not want those to do more harm than good. And just because something is spiritual doesn't mean it's automatically going to be beneficial. We can do, and a lot of you have experienced that, I mean, the sort of harmful side of spiritual pursuits. And so I always feel like at sacred times of the year, Lent or Advent, when we're really inclined to take on some things, to do it always with the spirit that like we've said before in other weeks, of be good to ourselves, be gentle with ourselves, pick a couple things that you think will have some impact, or if you haven't done much, just pick something small and try it out. You know, start with a devotional book if you've never really added something to Advent, and pick something that's good and that'll make you think, but that's concise, you know, something that'll give you some depth or some challenge in some new areas. You know, maximize the impact. Don't add so many things to your life that you regret it later, because that's not what we're after.
Skip a day. It's okay. Skip a week.
Yeah,
do something every Saturday instead of every single day. Yeah, like it's okay. It's okay. God loves you. Like, it's okay. Love yourself. You're loved. I promise.
Yeah, and anytime I pick one of those books, like I will skip days and I don't worry about it. I just keep on going. Sometimes I read and catch up, but I don't add guilt to myself in doing this. I'm doing it for depth, and like it's okay. Yeah, exactly. DG, thank you for saying that. I think that's really important for us. And then the second thing, it just didn't fit into our earlier conversation about sort of what Advent means, but it's something I've really thought of in the past several years. One of the mystic and spiritual writers that I uncovered somewhere along the journey, and that who I really appreciate, is Meister Eckhart, who's a German mystic from the way back years, and he was branded a heretic by the church and then later pardoned, because his thinking for the time was out there, and it's still a bit out there. Some of his reading still today is pretty hard going. Very, very, very academic, wrote in Latin and German, and some of his Latin stuff is pretty crazy, even in translation. But when it comes to Advent season, one thing that Eckhart articulated that really struck me, and has continued to strike me every Advent, is basically something along the lines of the reason Mary, bore Jesus and gave birth to Jesus is so that we ourselves can carry and have Jesus born in us now. Like, that's the whole point, is right for us to join in that journey. And so for me, a big piece of Advent is always, okay, God, I too want to undertake this journey. I too want to create room. Part of that can be the purging stuff, right, Todd, that you mentioned. I want to do it in community. I don't want to do it in isolation. But I really do.
Impregnate
I want to have
us. Impregnate us.
Yeah. But I want to carry the Lord and give birth anew to Jesus in my own life, and then into the lives of others this Advent. So I just leave that as my kind of parting thought, that I think that's also what Advent's about, and really what all these spiritual practices we've been talking about are supposed to contribute to. And so if they are not life-giving, then they're missing the point, right? If it's about life and the birth of Jesus in us and for the sake of the world, then these spiritual disciplines or things we undertake should contribute to that. And if they don't, then we let them go. And we find those things, we search for those things that help bring life to bear in us and for others. And if it's not quite working, we just let that go, and we look onwards for another thing that God provides that is life-giving and helps us in that journey. So
good.
may we find those
and
things.
and to be willing to be I always hate the term submissive because it's not a good term nowadays. But to be willing to be able to sacrifice, a lot of my freedoms, a lot of my joys and gifts that God has given me without being pregnant, to sacrifice all of that stuff to make room for that pregnancy within me, and to be able to commit to that caring and that, that's just beautiful, man. Thank you, John. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, well, thank you guys, and thank you all for joining us. This was good. Good things to talk about, and it's not things we often talk about in church enough, I think. And so, this is a good time for us to be able to do that. All these things come from really important places and have been an important part of church history for much, much longer than we've been alive. So, it's good to reach back and to celebrate these things and lift them up. And the seasons is one good way to do that. And so I think it'll be cool. Maybe to talk about, maybe that's like a rhythm we get into here, is talking about each church season as we kind of approach it, and see what kind of comes out of that. Because like Christmas and Epiphany and the stuff that's coming up, Lent's, always really good. And so there's certain ones we focus on more than others, but I think lamenting and Lent can kind of go well together too. And so we can kind of touch back on that idea, how to lament better. When Rob Bell started his church, he started by preaching out of the book of Leviticus, which is crazy, right? And so when we started our church, we started with Lamentations. We're gonna have a blues jam, and so we thought it would be Lamentations would be good. But reading through that is like something I've never really done before. So
yeah,
we can definitely get better at lamenting because it's super uncomfortable.
Yeah,
super uncomfortable. But thank you guys, and thank you all for joining us. And we'll see you next week virtually. Hit us up, leave some comments for us. Tell us who's your favorite or whatever. Thanks a lot, and you guys have a good one.